got involved back in 7th grade, and I was in the South Euclid school system at Greenview. I think they call it junior high. I was going to say middle school. Beachwood's on a middle school system. So I was involved through a friend. I wrestled there, and then when I came to Beachwood, I moved to Beachwood going into 8th grade. And in Beachwood, just some of my friends that I was making friends with at the time asked me to come out and wrestle, and I ended up wrestling in 8th grade. I was lucky enough to be with some guys that had some wrestling experience. Tommy Weiss and some of my other friends were good, and they brought me along. And thankfully, one thing led to another, and then by the time I got into 9th grade, things progressed. Kirk Morgenstern was our wrestling coach at the time, and he brought us along, and I think I had a winning record, maybe 8-0 or something like that back in the day in 8th grade. So I was showing some talent, and I got involved with Tommy and Michael Goldberg and Jeff Tolan and some of these guys. Those two guys were a grade below me, but we all kind of gelled together. They thought I would be some good competition for Alan Savransky, who was one of the lighter weights at Beachwood High School. So I went up there to practice, and it was after practice, a couple of the guys grabbed me and they tied me up and threw me in a locker. Ricky Stone, I think he's one of the culprits behind all that. But it was a way, it was kind of like a little bit of welcomed hazing, which I could handle, and it was fun. From there, I ended up wrestling in high school, and we just had the core team of a lot of good guys. And if we're going to go into talking about Coach I, his strength was taking a desperate, just all different types of, personalities, and he took us all and gelled us together, because you had all sorts of personalities. We had so many good times as a team, and you could go from practices, believe it or not, practices were brutal, but at the same time you're enjoying it. It's kind of a strange dichotomy, but you're living through a really tough practice, and then all of a sudden you go in the locker room and it's just a lot of fun. Some of the special moments are a couple of the big wins I've had, and a special moment is even losing at one point when I wrestled. It was in the Kenston tournament in my junior year. I ended up losing in the semifinals to somebody, and I was wrestling up a weight class, and at that point I realized that I was better than I thought, and even though I lost, it gave me that ability to think, hey, I maybe am better than I think. And from then on, I just went on and ended up winning the state my junior year. But it was kind of that loss that kind of tweaked something in my brain. It was to Rob Sherrill, I think. I was coaching over at Fuchs Mizrahi. I was the head wrestling coach there. And it was after practice, and I ordered a pizza to go from Izzy's. And I went to Izzy's to go pick up my pizza, and the guy behind the counter knew that I was a wrestling coach there, and we somehow got into it, and he started asking me some questions, and he was sizing me up. And I'm like, do you want to go a takedown right now? And he said yes. So there were kids in the store, and they literally cleared out the tables in the middle of the store. And this is right before dinner. I'm a little hungry, but I'm anxious to take on the challenge. And I look at this guy, and we start going at it. And I have to admit, it was a beautiful move. I popped this guy's head down, and I did this. It's called a front headlock fireman's. Threw him over me right into right onto the ground, and took him down. It was done. Said thanks, and I got my pizza. Went to go to my car. The kids were going crazy in the restaurant. They were all excited. And I go to my car, and I go to open the door in my car, and I go to sit in, and I'm like, oh, my back is wasted. By the time I got home, I could not even move. But, I got the victory there. By the time I got home, my wife was like, what are you doing? You're too old to be doing that type of thing. But it was one of my best victories, I have to say, that I ever had. But I never got the video of it, but I have to admit, it was a great move. It was a beautiful move. There's several guys that I looked at, and it's interesting because, as a wrestler, you kind of mimic certain styles. Ricky Sorkin was a wrestler that just used to wrestle with and get into like interesting positions and work his way out and into other things. So I kind of watched how he handled things. I liked David Fisher, who was quick and swift, and I liked what he did. I liked Jerry Levine, who was strong and did his type of technique. And I just kind of was watching and learning from these guys, which were older than me. And then at the same time, I'm wrestling with a lot of strong competition, which made me better. I had the Tommy Weisses of the world, the Stu Smileys, the Richard Harris, and all these guys were in my weight class that every day I'm working with them, and they're all at a high level to begin with, and it just kind of made me better. So just coupling the competition I had locally and then, also looking up at the older guys and seeing what they offered helped me, progress into a better wrestler. Coach I was, there at a big part of, my development. He was there coaching us and putting us through the grind, and at the same time being there for us when, the ups and downs of practice and winning and losing, and just, all around just a good person. And I ended up coaching. Your father brought me into coaching. I coached at Beachwood Middle School for some time after, several years after I graduated. And I came back and I had a new respect for Coach I after I started to coach, because there's, you got to manage kids, you got to manage parents. And, Coach I, was juggling a lot of interesting personalities back in the day and interesting parents at the same time. So I guess over time, I have more respect for Coach I than being in the moment. Sometimes when you're just there as a young wrestler, you appreciate everything he does, but when you look on the big picture, he's a special guy, and to survive this long as he did, and I think he's done great. I feel like I was a hard worker. I kind of just kept straight into, I hope people respected my game, is all it was, and I hope that spoke for everything. I wasn't out there promoting or doing anything special. I was just trying to win and to be a good team member, and that's it. And I think in the big picture, people look back on that and hopefully think it was a good thing. I'm sure you hear this from everybody. It gives you a discipline, and it has stuck with me from day one. It's not a sport that's a glamorous sport. It's a sport you got to dig in and do your work. And, it's on the mat, and it's especially off the mat. You can't sit there and just put in that hour and a half after school and expect to be good. You have to do things after the fact. And that happens, in life too. You can't just sit there and go to work and think you're done at 9 to 5 or whatever you're doing. You got to be working after the fact and when people aren't working. So it's the same thing when I was wrestling. I'd go work at my dad's restaurant, and I would go, in the back room, and I'd be doing dips on whatever I could find to do dips on, or I'd be doing something else, lifting and doing things to just make myself, give myself that extra strength. When I do push-ups or do anything, if you're doing 25, I'm doing 26. You're doing something in the mental part that gives you that extra edge, and that's how I operated, and it's how I continue to operate, personally and professionally. That's a good question. It's a new generation. It's as tough of a sport as it's ever been. It's still not a glamorous sport, and it's something that I just give them advice to stick it out and get those little victories that get you to the next step.